mock heroic. There's a mock heroic style. Did they ever give the terminology here, Stony Brook? Mock heroic? No? Death of a Toad? Death of a Toad by, I think it's Everhart. Toad gets chopped up by a lawnmower, and it's done in really grandiose phraseology and terminology. Okay, fine. Let's move on. It's a, trust me, mock heroic ballad. Thank you very much. Okay? So now we're starting to see that in terms of form, in terms of plot, character, setting, in terms of a lot of stuff. There are definitely things here on this poem. You know, this, however, when I read this, and I was thinking about how this plot was so similar to many others I've read since my youth, I started thinking about one of my favorite authors who I discovered when I was in undergraduate school at good old St. John's University, and that was Joseph Campbell. Anybody here know Joseph Campbell? His seminal work was a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. I think he published that first in 1945. Okay, so kind of you know, it's a fairly intellectual academic book. It's kind of rough going. I wouldn't suggest that you read that first in terms of the things that he's written. I'll tell you a book you should read, which is based upon interviews he had with Bill Moyers, is The Power of Myth. It's very accessible reading. I would read it. It's one of those books you should read during the summer before you go off and get your first teaching job. It talks an awful lot about the metaphors in literature and things that you need to know. And one of his primary notions, Campbell's, is that what you see with all these different stories with this one hero who has these 1,000 faces is that the plot is pretty much the same. What you have is, as I suggested, you have initiation, separation, and notice how I spell separation, for instance, P-A-R, not P, separation, return. Okay? I mean, look at what the boy in Jabberwocky does. He leaves, you know, his home. He gets initiated by having, you know, he's going after this initiation. He separates, you know, from his family and his old life. Okay, and that also separates him from his childhood. All right, and now all of a sudden after he meets the challenge, he returns. Look at these other. Look at Odysseus. Odysseus goes off. He's gone 20 years. Okay, he comes back. He's certainly having this big initiation into the realities of life. He leaves his homeland of Ithaca. He just has a new baby, Telemachus. Doesn't want to leave Telemachus. He's tricked into. Agamemnon tricks him into, you know, to going into the war by trying to kill his son with a plow, and you know, because Odysseus is acting like he's crazy, and when he starts to run, they start to run over the kid, and he saves Telemachus, and then Agamemnon says, "You're not crazy. You come with us." So he goes off, Odysseus. He's separated from his homeland, his family, his new child, and has these great adventures, from which he emerges victorious. Okay, and then he returns to tell and show Telemachus how to be a man. Telemachus is still, if you recall the story, his mother's treating him like a boy, not unlike Jack in the Beanstalk, not unlike his mother. Okay, and then off he goes. He helps his father slay the suitors. So he becomes a man. All right? So you see this. You see the story of Christ. Hey, Christ leaves his mom. He says, hey, I'm off to do my father's business. All right? All of a sudden he's out. He's separated from his old life. He's separated from the life of normal humanity, from Mary and Joseph. Goes off, has these things, does these different things, winds up getting crucified. Okay? Getting crucified. Separated from his life. Separated from whatever. And then he returns, resurrects, comes back and tells everybody, if you believe as I believe, if you do what I say for you to do, you too can return. You too can meet the challenge of death and emerge victorious eternally and come back. Buddha, same thing. Buddha, the family shelters him from death, disease, all kinds of stuff, poverty. You have to see it one day when somebody says, ask one of the servants, hey, what's this all about? I said, what's this person? Well, it's strange. Well, he's just old. What's that about that person? Oh, that person's sick. Sick? What's disease? Doesn't know. Decides to leave. He leaves the cushy environs of his castle and all that stuff, and the harems and the horses and the whole 9 yards. Goes off. He joins, the Samanas, his poverty-stricken group, and he begs for his living. And he goes through different ways of living until finally, one day, he sits under the bo tree after all these different experiences and gets nirvana and goes, now I understand. And so, and of course, when people came to talk to him, he would return to his homeland and say, hey, I have gained nirvana, you can too. This is a common theme in almost every story that you read. So looking once again at the poem, as far as I'm concerned, this is everybody's life story in a nutshell. It's your story. It's my story. It's just going to be your student's story. We've all done this. We've all had to separate from our adolescence, from our childhood. I mean, students who are adolescents, I always tell them, you know, hey, you're already, as an adolescent, it means you're half adult and half child. You've separated from your childhood. When you graduate here, you're going to go into adulthood. And then one of these days, when you get educated and get a career, you may come back, if you want to be a teacher, for example, and tell your students here at LCI, hey, I faced these challenges. I emerged victorious. I came back. Let me tell you how I did it. You can do it too. You too can meet the challenges of your life, meet the monsters of your life, the Jabberwocks of your life, slay them and emerge victorious and return to help other people slay their dragons, all right? So, this whole thing, I mentioned Muhammad, I mentioned Buddha, and I mentioned Christ. These are religious icons. I've mentioned them before in this class. Which reminds me, what does the word religion mean? Good time. What's the word religion mean? Anybody? I've already given you the suffix ion, or tion, or ation. What else? What does that mean? Did you take notes, anybody? Ah, Mr. Angiano.
A set of beliefs.
No. I just want the suffix. Just the suffix. Don't define religion. I just want the definition for the suffix. I know I've given it to you before. I had to. Thank you. I can't. She's too far away. I can't read her. If I do that, I'll lose time. All right. So it's an act of. An act of. RE. Let's go to the prefix. This is easy. What does RE usually mean before words? No. What does the RE mean? So you're thinking of regard. Forget about the RE only. As in renew. As in again. No, because the guard part means to look. Means to look again. See, the RE means again. Good. And what's lig mean? L-I-G, lig. What words spring to mind using that little root, lig, L-I-G, in this way?
Litigate.
Law? No, you think of litigate? No, that's Liddy. Forget that. You're wrong.
To connect, like ligament?
To what?
To connect?
Like a ligament. The ligaments connect what to what? Let's say if you know your biology, anatomy, your kinesiology, so your muscles and bones. What? Kinesiology, students here now? Well, ligament joins what to what?
Bone to bone.
Thank you, sir. Athlete, he knows. Bone to bone because tendons attach muscles to bone. So a ligament is bone to bone, so it really means to link, really. That's a fast way, link. An act of linking again. And the whole notion of a religion is what? That you somehow feel that there's something bigger and more powerful than yourself, and you want to relink with that power. You say, well, wait a minute, Mr. S, what do you mean you relink? Why would you want to relink? Well, first of all, were you always here? Were you always alive? You are? You are? You were always alive. When was your birthday? Did you exist before your birthday? My birthday was June 22nd, 1945. I say that not for any instructional purposes. I want those of you who remember to send me big, expensive gifts. June 20. Did I exist before June 22nd, 1945? Did I exist on this planet? No, I did not. Students used to say to me, well, Mr. S, if you don't believe in heaven or hell and stuff like that, then where do you go when you die? So I said, well, so I was thinking, well, I'm going to go to wherever I was before I was born. What's so funny, Ms. Love Regine? I think that makes perfect sense. Did I know where I was before I was born? No. Did I have a sense of my own consciousness? No. Was I laughing, smiling, looking for food? No. When I die, based upon the funerals I've gone to, I don't think I'll be remembering anything. I don't think I'll be looking for food. I don't think I'll be, you know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna, so I'm going to go to wherever I was before I was born. Do I remember it? No. Does it exist for me where I was born, where I was before? No. So, but however, do I have a spiritual sense? I'm as spiritual as the next guy. I generally find my spirit being uplifted when I'm at the beach early in the morning before everybody gets there. When I used to go out surfing by myself, I used to do that all the time. When I used to ride my horse through the woods of an evening or early in the morning, I found that whenever I felt most spiritual, I was in nature. So, but the notion of religion, organized religion certainly, is to say, well, we need to relink with that great power, that great spirit that somehow we came from. All right? And that's religion, and most religions would kind of deal with that. So, again, looking at this poem, okay, I would say this, I mean, you know, what you're talking about, what I mentioned the word before about adolescence, what you really have is this notion of, you see with Christ transforming from man to deity, we see with adolescence transforming from childhood into adulthood, this notion of transformation. Okay, word attack groupies, let's do this one. Transformation. Let's go backwards. You usually go from the end part to the front part. A-T-I-O-N, T-I-O-N, I-O-N, we already know, thanks to Ms. Snapkowski. She said it means an act of. Yes, it does. Form. Oh, this is a tough one. This is not a homework going, duh. This should be easy. Form.
To make.
What?
To make. Form something.
Be.
Oh, I thought you said to mate. I'm going. I'm trying to figure out how that works.
We'll make it work.
Yeah, I'll find a way. Form. Actually, shape or change. Yeah, what am I saying? Shape. Right. Change shape. Well, we want shape. Shape. Okay, I like you dummy. And of course, trans means what? Trans.
Group, change the name.
Travel.
See, the dearth of word attack skills in art school. Across. It means across. So what it means here is an act of changing or shaping across, changing shape. You transform from your old life into your new life. You are this metamorphosis. You are in this little chrysalis of, let's say, adolescence, and you emerge into your adulthood. We do it spiritually, we do it intellectually, we do it physically, okay? I remember that was fun, boy. That was fun. Going through that phase, that was fun. It's all craziness, okay? It's very vivid. If you think back about it, you can say, oh, things I'm changing. I am definitely changing. I remember the first time I tried to sing when I actually got to that magical point in my life when I reached puberty. I had a pretty decent, they said, an alto voice. It was asked by the church I was forced to go to catechism in those days, and the bottom line was I started to sing unusual songs, and all of a sudden bizarre noises came out. They never went back to the old way. Singing's not something I do. It just isn't, okay? So what happens, you metamorphose into all these different things, presumably into your adulthood. So what we have here, really look at this poem, I'm looking at this thing about transformation. I mean, one of the things we all know, if we know our Heraclitus, remember Heraclitus? Ancient Greek philosopher. Don't know Heraclitus, 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 who said that you never step into the same river twice, that life is ever-changing change, life is change, transformation, all life is change. You know, most people, unfortunately, tend to be afraid of change. They're very conservative. You learn right away, especially the old surfer types learn, hey, each wave is different. You have to learn to accept the change and embrace the change. Well, just accept it, but embrace it and know that, hey, I have to embrace it. I can't do anything else. This life is change. It's not going to stay static. Love doesn't stay static. Relationships don't stay static. Your education doesn't stay static. Everything is changing all the time, okay? And again, I look at this poem and I'm saying to myself, aha, it reminds me of a number of things. Because life is change, okay? And it's difficult to predict. You kind of have to accept the notion that, that the Asian philosophers are correct. We have to live in the moment, live in the now, otherwise we miss an awful lot. The Hindus tell us that it's not the destination that counts, it's the journey. It's the journey, okay? Which reminds me of a great Buddhist koan. You know what a koan is? The Christians would probably call it, it's like a parable. Koan, K-O-A-N. It's a pretty well-known koan. You may have heard it before, but I'll tell you anyway. Ancient, old, withery Buddhist monk. He's up high in the Himalayas, and he always goes to meditate before lunch on this precipice. And then in order for him to get there, he has to go through a very, very narrow opening in the rocks because he wants to be alone. He doesn't want to be disturbed. So here he is on the precipice. He's looking many thousands of feet down, the vistas of the Himalayas, and he's meditating while he's having a great time. All of a sudden, he hears the gong. I got gongs at home. I love these gongs. Here's this gong for lunch. He gets up from his lotus position, starts to head back, and he sees as he gets to this little narrow passage, he sees a slobbering, slathering, saber-toothed tiger. Okay? And he goes, oh, I'm old, I'm decrepit, I've got no weapons, this is going to eat me. Now, most ancient people don't like being eaten by wild animals, although the Buddhists, the Tibetan Buddhists have sky burials, vultures eat their bodies and stuff and take them away. It's a very sacred ritual. He wasn't into that. Anyway, he says, I only have two shots here. Either I get eaten by this tiger, or I can go run this way off the cliff and at least die by jumping off the cliff. I'll choose my own way. Okay, fine. He decides to do that because if death is inevitable, I'm going out that way. He jumps off the cliff. He's plummeting down 32 feet per second for you physics and science geeks, okay? A little science here, okay? 32 feet per second, and as he's plummeting down, he looks down, he sees this branch cropping out from the rocks. And on the branch is this big, red, juicy berry, okay? As he gets closer and closer, he reaches out. He grabs the berry. He's plummeting down. He grabs the berry, takes a big bite. The juice is coming all over his chin and cheeks. And he goes, ah, delicious. Splat, he's dead. Splat. So what's the point? What's the point of this little koan, this little parable? Somebody else. Anybody? God, it's as plain as the nose on your face.
That's where we're going. Enjoy the ride.
A little closer, Mr. Angriano.
Live for the now.
Yes. That even though you know that death is inevitable, even though it's going to be fractions of seconds away, that you have one last chance to suck the sweetness and juice and vitality out of life. You eat it and you enjoy it while you got it. That's why in World War II they used to always tell the soldiers, hey, you got a 10-minute break, smoke them if you got them. Enjoy that smoke while you can, because it might be your last one. All right? So it's this whole notion of living in the now, of having this life is constant change, and we have to be ready for that challenge of an ever-changing life that changes every day, every week, every month, every year. Okay? So I look at this poem again, and I'm saying to myself, wow, what's this poem really about? If I follow Campbell's lead, his thought was that a lot of the stories and a lot of this whole idea of initiation, separation, and return was something that gave us not the meaning of life, but the meaning of the experience of life. That we all know what the experience of life really seems to be. And a lot of these stories address what the experience of life seems to be for us, for most of us. So it's not about the meaning of life, it's about the meaning of the experience of life, which is a bit different. And so I look at a poem like Jabberwocky and I'm going, well, this poem isn't nonsense to me. I mean, it says if I follow the classic notions of plot and structure and these great stories, these motifs that most stories or many stories have, I can see in it that it's not unlike those stories. And it may be considered to be a nonsense poem by many people who don't maybe know any better or don't think all that much or don't read all that much. But there's no question that I think I can make a case, or I've made a case for this notion that maybe this poem, this nonsense poem, really is a lot more than just frivolous, thoughtless nonsense. By the way, just so you know, Lewis Carroll was a well-known genius mathematician. So he was no dope. He may have seen something else in his poem when he wrote it that maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but I wouldn't put it past him. So now I ask you again, I asked you at the beginning of the class, is this poem a nonsense poem? No? Good. Think about this tonight. We'll consider this in future days. We'll read other poems. Okay? I want to thank you for your kind attention, and peace and love, brothers and sisters. This class is over. Okay, now, thank you. Now, so, here we are, folks. What do you think? Mama Jean, why are you looking at me? Why are you eyeballing me this way?
Well, because I'm in the teaching field right now. I've done this permanently for 6 years and on and off for 10. And I like how you incorporate different stories rather than just focusing on this one thing and that's it.
Always add more to the stew as much as you possibly can. Don't be narrow in your thinking. Give students notice. I mentioned a lot of stuff. Notice if you'll read it, you'll see it. This, by the way, I'm giving you a copy of the lesson plan. The top 2/3 is the lesson plan I would have handed into an administrator. The bottom part is the part I would do. I use for myself. The bottom part is just a listing of things in the order in which I would want to bring them up. Okay. But it says here, if you look at what the content is, there are elements of literature, mythology, philosophy, physics, psychology, sociology, theology. Then it says mention, explain, mock heroic, portmanteau words, transformation, separation, initiation, return, Buddhist koans. Did I do all that? Yes, I did.
Question.
Yes, go ahead.
Did that be overwhelming though to some students? Like, did they lose what you were trying to do?
There are always some who do. But you see, again, here's the other thing. When this lesson, I said to you, would be 3rd or 4th day into my lesson plan on my unit. I would wind up referring to this all the time. And by the way, my students would too. Would you mind, please, because I'm talking.
And you tied everything in, so.
Yeah, and that's your job. Your job is to find a way. And again, I told you when you do your lesson plans, decide what it is about the piece of literature that you like and want to bring out to your students. You have to know where you want to go first. And then, let's see, Bill Gates says, where do you want to go today? Right? And where do you want to go today? He's right. Where do you want to go today? I'm going to give you the means, says Mr. Gates, with my computer, allow you to get to where you want to go today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, what are the means by which I'm going to get to where I want to go? So I have a little bit of this. I have a little bit of board work, right? A little bit of AutoCAD. I have like an anticipatory set or advanced organizer, like, well, is this poem nonsense, right? What other things? I'm doing my little poetry process at the beginning, and they're going to do that process every time we read a poem or any piece of literature. There are things that I'm doing. Everything in this lesson was deliberate, and I have to say to you, friends, the first time I did this lesson, it was never written down. It was totally spontaneous. I was having a good day. I was on a caffeine high. I don't know what it was. All I know was that all of a sudden it all came together for me, just bubbled up from my unconscious. I don't know if I ever had that good a day before or since in my teaching career, but whatever it was, I was able to do this lesson, and I've campaigned this lesson at different colleges and different high schools, and the reality of it is I generally find that most students definitely get the major aspects of it. They do. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say, I wrote some notes down while you were speaking,
Right.
and you used humor, which I think is very cool. And you also interacted with the students. It wasn't a lecture, even though it could have been a funny lecture.
Yes.
You still interacted with the students.
I chose not to goof around too much with this because I had a place of work to go. Now, with other poems that I'm not going to make such a profound, serious point about, I might be a lot more relaxed. I'm also making sure that, by the way, if you notice, I chose certain things to do. There were words I chose not to do. I think the 1 or 2 people put their hands up and I kind of ignored them because I had to answer some other people. Why? I needed to control the flow. Remember, friends, when you are teaching, it's like the outer limits. You control the horizontal, you control the vertical. You'd be foolish not to. And don't worry about it. I'm going to traumatize their little academic psyches if they're going to try to express themselves and I cut them short, or I tell them, well, that's not quite right. No! Come on, you got to say that. No, you're off the track. No, and this guy's point of view right now is not so much better than yours, but different than yours, and probably, given this discussion, more apropos. Any comments? Anybody else, friends? I'm looking at. I want to see if there's anything I missed on my lesson plan. I don't think I missed anything. I'm sure you will. Yes, Jim.
You make it seem very impromptu. Like when you do it, like
Yeah.
you make everything seem like you're just doing it at that moment. Like I had no idea half of this was planned because the stories that you put in, I wouldn't think of planning to put in a story.
I need to hug you. Yes, see, this is why I love teaching. You see, that's exactly the point. The point is, I don't want you. I want my students to think that everything I'm doing is spontaneous. Because here's what I learned at the very beginning of my teaching career. I noticed that whenever I mentioned Betty Lou, all of a sudden they'd lean forward in their seats. Oh, this could get dirty. Or I might say, well, the Admiral and I, or Nurse Ratched, you know, if I was in a bad mood, they said, oh, personal gossip. They lean forward.
Right.
I used to tell, I had a couple of student teachers, I said, I think I may have told you the story, but I had a student teacher, I told him to take the lesson, the plan book, and I said, like, I'm gonna walk out of the room and say, you know, Mrs. Schiavo and I agreed that I was gonna do this lesson plan. Well, damn it, I don't wanna do that, I wanna do this. Now, we planned it, and I said, go off, be conspiratorial with your class, and say, yeah, the old fossil is gone, the Gordons of Gloucester fisherman has taken a powder, okay? He's gone out, and now we're gonna do it, you know, while the cat's away, the mice will play. That's a great thing. I'm conspiratorial, you know, I mean, I do that all the time. Why? Because, yeah, we're in this boat together. The system is a problem. The bureaucracy is a nightmare. So we go, and we can mumble, and we can groan, and we can say nasty things, and we're, all of a sudden, we're what? We're not separate, we are one. Because what I say to you, a really good class, especially over 40, it should be kind of like a family. The students should want to be unhappy to leave it, to feel some sense of remorse that, my God, we'll never have this again. Just like you did when you got to a point, and your parents felt it too, you got to a certain age, and they went, oh God, my little baby. My little Betty, oh, Beth's gonna be, oh, she's gonna go to college. Daddy's gonna go, oh. That's what happens. And you're gonna say, oh, wow, God, I really miss Mom's home-cooked stews, and the pasta, and the meatballs. Her meatballs were so special. Whatever. That's what happens. We all do that. We all do that. Anything else that you guys saw? Because again, I could do a lot of things. There was anticipatory set, advanced organizers. There was a method to the Captain Willis madness. But the point is, Ms. Fisher, I want to thank you for that, is I'm trying to make sure it looks spontaneous. Partly because that's how I work. And most experienced teachers don't plan even this much. I told you before, when I came up with this whole interpretation, I did it totally off the cuff, totally spontaneous. I was surprised in myself. And I said, you know, damn, that was good. I'm going to write that down. I'll probably forget this in about 2 hours. I wrote it down. I'm not going to lie to you. It just bubbled up from my unconscious based upon all the things I read outside of English. Campbell, I guess, goes under the realm of mythology and philosophy. I don't know, but I read a lot of different stuff, sociology, all the things you see listed here. But I'm a philosophy minor and a theology minor. I'm a psychology major at graduate level, besides English. I mean, all these different things come into play. And what I'm saying to you, you have to use everything you've ever learned, everything you've ever read, every experience you've ever had. And your unconscious, by the way, has never forgotten it, say the psychiatrist. It's all there. You just need the right little button to be pushed, like Proust with the little rum-soaked Madeleine cake, right? He takes this little bite of this rum-soaked Madeleine, all of a sudden he's good for 2,000 pages, for crying out loud, based upon his reaction to the smell and to the flavor of this rum-soaked Madeleine cake, okay? So, you know, that's how I work. That's how a lot of experienced teachers work. You don't have that luxury, because if you tried to do that, you'd probably crash and burn, have flop sweat, and things like that. Because it wouldn't necessarily come, you know, you just had experience enough. And it's really more about practice and experience than it is about intellect or IQ or anything else. Comments, other comments or questions? Yes, sir?
I really like the relatability that you used. And like, I would never compare this with Jack and the Beanstalk, like, right, just from my own person, like if I read this for the first time.
Yeah.
But just by giving that to the student, you place what they already know and just kind of looks like you're pulling it out of them, but like they've analyzed that without realizing.
And there's no question I'm going for the cheap sexual innuendo. However, if you read a book called Uses of Enchantment by Brutal Bettelheim, which is a very Freudian look at fairy tales, he does talk about this in terms of what I suggested, that the beanstalk is in fact a phallic symbol for the emerging pubescent young man. He talks about Cinderella, how the slipper is really a vagina, looking for the appropriate fit. Okay, I'm not going to bore you with the details. It's a great book to read. I mean, it's a lot more serious than I made it sound, but it's a terrific book. The Uses of Enchantment, Brutal Bettelheim. He was a concentration camp survivor, became a psychiatrist, child psychiatrist, and committed suicide ultimately. But a really interesting book. Any other comments and questions? I mean, notice, this is something, I mean, I did it in the format that I gave you, the format that most schools do, the format that's in your textbook. Okay, you start off with objectives, you got content, you got procedures, you have instructional materials. okay? And then, of course, I just did the bottom notice, it's just an outline, just a list of stuff in it. But in here, and by the way, administrators see this top part, and they're gonna think you're the hottest thing on skates professionally. They're gonna go, oh man, boy, we hired a hot one, man, we hired you, we were brilliant. What a great decision we made. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Couldn't help but notice that you never stand still.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The cameraman saying I never stand still. But it's, again, well, the great Greek philosophers, there was a whole school of them called the Peripatetics. They walk around a lot. Peri meaning around. I do. It's energy, it's nerves, it's a lot of things. It's excitement, it's enthusiasm. And by the way, the real reason though is, especially in the high schools, they can't get a moving target all that well. So, yeah, go ahead.
I observed a teacher who actually said that, she actually explained to the class that that if you move around, it makes it easier for the class to concentrate on you.
It's
Whereas
true.
if you stand still, it's hard to concentrate, and she was complaining that the regents required them to only move 2 steps to the left or 2 steps to the right when they're reading, so you really had to learn, she was teaching her class to learn to concentrate.
You know, I gotta be honest with you, most of what the New York State Regents Board wants you to do now, a lot of their suggestions are just utter twaddle, especially for long-term professionals. Even this thing about doing the cooperative learning for your tape. I mean, there are a lot of experienced teachers who have take real issue with that because it's used improperly and unprofessionally. It's a license for many teachers to do a lot less and let their most intelligent, motivated students pick up the slack. It's not terrific, but you learn as a professional teacher to pretty much ignore anybody in bureaucracy that's pretty much above your chairperson. In fact, starting with your chairperson. I hate to say it, but most of them, you know, yeah, okay, fine, you want us to do that, sure, yeah, well, they'll try. And then they go off in their room and they do their own thing. They have to do what works with their students, and nobody else can tell them what that is. They know. There are ideas, I mean, again, a lot of administrators are excellent and do have some excellent ideas, but you have to learn to pick and choose. They are not all equal, just like teachers are not all equal, just like students are not all equal. Any other questions or comments about this lesson plan and how I interpreted the poem, how I did it? Yes?
Would you get them to start, if they don't get it, would you get them to start pushing, see if they start coming up with analogies on their own? Or?
Yes, but what I would probably do is, in order for me to do this lesson so I get the whole, go from start to finish,
Right.
I would do it the next day. So look, you know, any questions about this, or I might go, gee, Mr. LaSalle, you seem to be a little confused.
Right.
Is it so? Am I correct that you're confused? Were you confused about that? Because that's when I saw that look on your face. Was it this line or this idea, or was it something else? And I have news for you. Most of the students, when you take it to them personally, they will react, well, yeah, it was. As a matter of fact, you got from here to there. How'd you do that? Okay, I mean, what did Heraclitus have to do with it? It's a Heraclitus, Greek philosopher. Life is ever-changing change. You never step into the same river twice. It's one of the first philosophers I learned as a freshman in my philosophy class. Okay? Oh, really? Okay, you said that? Yeah. So you know about Archimedes? Yeah, what does that have to do with anything? Nothing. I just want to see if you know about Archimedes. You know. I mean, when you go to a tub, you know, or the water splashes out. Archimedes' principle. That's why boats float. So, I mean, is it? Yeah. That's right. That's why boats float. Archimedes' principle. Don't be laughing at the captain. Okay. Another question. Any comment at all? Let me get it out because this is something that you're going to have to do now for yourself starting next session. Daily lesson plan. No? Okay, then I guess we can take a break. We've got 10 minutes from now. Guys, thank you for doing the camera breath. Because I thought it was